Exactly 1 year ago, I would publish my initial document that would spark a parade that rallied against a tyrant, silenced victims that would retaliate against an abuser. Throughout this entire movement, the abuser refuses to take responsibility for her actions. I've been encouraged by many to make a comprehensive summary of the entirety of Wubcake's history, briefly showcasing all of the events in her story in chronological order and how she's walked this path of destruction. This new video will showcase everything that's happened in the StopWubcake movement, along with some new things that associates of the movement found. If the piece of information was already covered, the thumbnail of the video that this information was in will be displayed in the lower left corner. That way, you may check the video in question to learn more in depth about the information presented. I want to tell everyone who watches this video, I don't want anyone to harass anybody over this ordeal. My stance on this has never changed throughout the StopWubcake movement and never will. If you wish harm on anyone on either side, you are just as deplorable and you are not welcome. I also do not feel comfortable profiting from situations like this, therefore this video will never be monetized. Are we clear on that? Good. Let's begin my comprehensive summary of the StopWubcake movement. Wubcake lived with her grandmother when she was younger. Her mother died when she was young, and she had never known her father. At age 10, Wubcake and her now former friend, Emily, would become acquaintances. While Emily does not remember much before middle school, a public police report from the Greenfield Police Department, of which you may read yourself, reads that Wubs, known in the report as 10-year-old Dakin, punched a special education teacher in the stomach during class. She was held back by her grandmother, whom Wubs despised. Normally, I'd be hesitant to bring up events this further back in the timeline. However, I think it is worth bringing up because of the fact that she hasn't changed at best, even now. You could say that maybe Wubs' grandmother was not a good motherly figure to Wubs, but many sources would report Wubcake's grandmother being very kind. Regardless, this event alone would paint a dark implication of what Wubs would grow up to become in the future. In 2007, Wubs and Emily's relationship as friends would grow into them becoming best friends. By the time Wubs was 12 to 13 years old, around 2009, Wubs and Emily would be deep into the relationship as best friends. However, it was also around this time when Emily would discover some red flags about Wubs. For instance, Wubs would grab Emily's developing chest area and would refuse to stop unless snapped at to stop. Additionally, the animosity between Wubs and her grandmother would escalate. Late one night, Wubs and Emily were chatting on the phone when Wubs' grandmother came in and told Wubs to go to bed since it was a school night. Wubs would retaliate by choking her grandmother. Emily heard the whole thing. In 2012, Wubs stopped going to school. Emily didn't want her best friend at the time to lag behind in her studies and was genuinely concerned. Unfortunately, it was all for naught, and Wubcake would never graduate high school. In the next few years, Wubcake would meet two new people. In early 2013, a now 17-year-old Wubcake met Maid, who was 15 years old at the time. They would later become girlfriend and boyfriend respectively. Wubcake would later get acquainted with people associated with the My Little Pony community and would join a Skype group chat including Cyclone Dusk, Rustic Shine, and Purple Roseland. Maid would also be included in this group chat. A little bit later in 2013, Pegasister Reacts, the old alias for a 12-year-old Jennabun, would send an email message to Wubcake, now 18 years old. They would meet online and add each other on Skype. Wubcake would then add Jenna to the previously mentioned Skype group chat. Wubcake would meet with Jenna in real life. Jenna remembers that Wubs said she had multiple personality disorder, and would try separating Jenna from family and her close friends, including a very important name in Haley. Wubs would later attempt to convince Jenna that they both had multiple personality disorder. Jenna would later say to me that she does not have the disorder. On one night in February 2015, a 13-year-old Jennabun would have a sleepover at a 19-year-old Wubcake's residence. Jenna and Wubs were in the same room together, and Wubs would sexually assault Jenna by putting one of her legs between Jenna's two legs and rubbing it in between while moaning and kissing Jenna on the lips, slobbering over Jenna's mouth with her tongue until she got bored and went to sleep. Throughout the entire thing, Jenna felt frozen, vulnerable, and was unable to move. Even after the sexual assault, Jennabun was unable to sleep. In the morning, she'd ask Cyclone Dusk if he heard anything from the room that she and Wubs were in, since he was sleeping right outside the room. Cyclone would say no, so Jenna would initially try convincing herself that the sexual assault was a dream. Wubcake and Jennabun would continue speaking to each other. In an archived Skype conversation, Wubcake would entertain the thought of being in a relationship with Jenna, but would hold back on the idea since she would, quote, feel like a pedo. I'm a legal adult and you're a minor. So, we have an acknowledgement that Jenna is a child and Wubs is an adult. This should not sit well with anyone. Considering that Wubs at this time is in a relationship with Maid, this means Wubcake entertained the idea of cheating on Maid with a child. Jennabun would later have a depressive episode and feel the need to speak with Wubs about the sexual assault. Wubs claimed she was watching a movie with Maid at that time. Because Wubs prioritized watching a movie over helping one of her friends, Jenna would become triggered and later confront Wubs in the group call. All of Rustic Shine, Cyclone Dusk, Haley, Purple Rosalind, and Maid were present in this call. Wubcake broke down crying on video, confessing to the assault, and profusely apologized to Jenna. After the group call, Jenna would end up being harassed by several people online, with some going as far to say that Jenna should off herself. It is speculated that after the group call ended, Wubcake would backpedal and spread the story online and claim that she was the victim of the sexual assault situation, making Jenna look like the villain. Maid would initially defend Wubcake, but would later regret this decision. Wubcake would then share and, shortly after, delete a YouTube post, now archived as a Google Plus post, about Jenna. I suspect that this YouTube post was likely the cause of people harassing Jenna in the first place. Wubcake would proceed to call Jenna a pathological liar and mentally unstable. According to Maid, and corroborated by Jennabun, Wubs would argue that it was her multiple personality disorder, alter, Adagio Dazzle, who initiated the sexual assault with Jenna before backpedaling when she realized that it would implicate that something had indeed happened between her and Jenna. Even in her now deleted response document talking about Jenna, Wubs indirectly confirms that something had taken place between her and Jenna. Eventually, the conflict between Jenna and Wubs would all culminate one day. Rustic Shine would joke about deleting Jennabun's channel. Wubcake would convince Rustic to actually delete Jennabun's channel. This was possible because both Rustic and Wubs had moderator privileges on Jennabun's channel at the time. Maid was present when this happened too. The deletion of Jennabun's channel painted the narrative that either Jennabun was guilty or that she left on her own accord. In reality though, Wubs and Rustic had essentially deleted Jennabun from the internet. Later in 2015, Wubcake started a friendship with Angel Love and her partner Galaxy Violet. Angel and Wubs would call frequently about their interests in voice acting and going to conventions, but we'll get back to them later. On December 20th, 2015, according to Emily, Wubcake ended up becoming homeless. Emily would invite Wubs to stay at her residence with her mother. Wubs took advantage of Emily and her mother's generosity by refusing to do anything to help herself other than leeching off of their resources. Eventually, Emily and her mother would go into debt and later also become temporarily homeless. On August 17th, 2016, Maid and Wubcake broke up. Wubs would claim to start a new relationship with another person in the Skype group. They'd later be known as the anonymous second ex-partner. Maid was furious, claiming to have said every single insult under the sun when he found out about the two of them being in a relationship. Wubs would take Maid's outburst out of context and claim that he was like that for the entirety of their relationship. Wubs would also make public tweets and drawings to further implicate that Maid was an abusive partner. On October 10th, 2016, Maid found out that Wubs had tried to hack into his Facebook account to see if she could find any dirt on him. When confronted about this discovery, Wubcake would claim it was fake, but Maid still had the original email showing that this was indeed real. Years later, the hacking attempt would be brought up again, and Wubs would still deny anything to do with it, but when Maid proposed an alternative option in her friend Emily to see Wubcake's response, she would immediately throw Emily under the bus. Maid eventually confronted Emily and not only confirmed that Emily was not behind the hacking attempt, but that Emily was there when Wubs attempted to hack into Maid's Facebook account. Later, Wubs would get in contact with a person who knew Maid named Tanner to help with the third fall of Gade by stalking his Skype, DeviantArt, and Twitter and insulting him with certain things such as his diagnosis with diabetes and his penis size. Tanner later contacted Maid and said he wouldn't do this since she's crazy and buried the hatchet. Unfortunately, this did not mean that Wubs was going to stop there, as she would continue making multiple public and private statements about Maid trying to make fun of him. The second ex-partner, who again wishes to remain anonymous, and Jay, the most recent ex-partner, can corroborate this statement. They had to repeatedly tell Wubs to shut up about Maid, but she just would not listen. Even after certain situations such as the Jen Blake situation, which we'll get into in a second, Maid would give up trying to fight back against Wubcake and sat quietly from the shadows. Hey, remember Jennabun? In October 2017, Jennabun would come out to Meliminis on Discord to talk about her experience with Wubcake. But there was one problem. Nothing happened after that. Jennabun wasn't heard, and one might initially think to themselves, why wasn't she heard? Her testimony is right there. It's simple. Barely anyone even talked about it. It was swept under the rug. Despite occasional rumors about the incident floating around the internet, Jennabun would also give up trying to fight back against Wubs and disappeared from the internet. For good this time. But yeah, we'll get to me later. June 20th, 2018. Wubcake became homeless for a second time and brought her newly acquired dog to Emily's new apartment even though the landlord did not allow for dogs to be in the residence. Wubcake's aunt wasn't ready to give Wubcake a roof to live under, so Emily was given no choice but to house Wubs again. After Wubcake informed Emily that her aunt was ready to take her in, Emily was initially happy for Wubs. But Emily later stated, I spoke with her aunt for a moment, and her aunt told me she was waiting for a message from Wubcake for a couple months saying she was ready to move in with her. Oh, that's not gonna elicit a happy response. Emily was rightfully furious, and Emily's mother would never allow Wubcake to step foot in her residence again. Emily's mother would write, it was a nightmare. She has zero respect for anyone. Her moral compass is messed up. She's a habitual liar with no remorse. I don't think her multiple personalities are legit. She's creative for sure, and I think she knows what she's doing. She just doesn't care about any consequences for her actions because she's never been held accountable for her behavior. By February 2019, Wubcake thought that enough was enough and would cease all communication with Emily, leaving her to fend all by herself with her mother, essentially vanishing from Wubcake's life. On August 20th, 2019, Wubcake accused Jen Blake, aka Pony Goddess, of scamming people of their GoFundMe cancer treatment donations. Wubcake claims that Jen completely disappeared when she deleted her social media and didn't give her thanks to the Brony community. A bunch of people, including Peter New, known as the official voice actor for Big Macintosh in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, would shut her down by not only stating that Jen is too busy fighting for her life to care about Wubs' fragility, but also that Jen wrote a long letter of thanks to the community before deactivating her accounts. She was called out for being all of insensitive, ignorant, and wrong. A hell of a threefer. Around March 2020, Wubcake would still publicly talk about Maid, which prompted one of Maid's friends to also call her out. Wubs would supposedly message this friend to apologize, but here's the catch. It wasn't Wubs. It was the anonymous second ex-partner who logged in and wrote that for Wubs. She still chose to not take accountability for it, because she simply couldn't be wrong. From all this, it is clear that Wubcake is still running from her past. But little did she know who she would meet next. Somewhere in 2020, Angel Love, Wubcake, Envy, who we'll get to later, and another friend all lived together in Dallas, Texas, but would slowly get less happy and more frustrated. In June 2020, Angel and Wubs got into an argument about Wubs' texts about how she was not doing anything for that bitch, Angel, anymore. After the argument, Wubs would block Angel on Discord and remove her from her fan server. After a few more escalations from both sides, Wubs would call the cops, have Envy restrain Angel, and, in the blink of an eye, Angel was sent to jail. Being bailed out from jail by Envy's parents, Angel would return to very disrespectful messages from supporters of Wubs to even Wubs herself. There's even a video where Wubcake publicly talks about Angel, painting her in a bad light. Understandably, this all completely crushed Angel. Late 2020 is when I would get involved. Wubcake left a comment on one of my videos saying that she would love to voice in some of my content soon, and we added each other on Discord. Said comment is now deleted, however. We had a common interest in Danganronpa, and Wubs would notably state that she had DID similarly to the character Toko Fukawa, aka Genocide Jack or Genocider Show. Oh yeah, sorry for potentially spoiling that for you. Randomly, on November 28th, 2020, Wubcake made me take a BDSM test with her. I'm unable to show my results since I never saved them, but this is Wubs' results that she sent me. When I showed her my test results, by the way, my results came out as full vanilla, she claimed that it meant I'd be, quote, boring in bed. Take that as you will. Two things that bothered me were obviously the fact that she casually killed someone's confidence by saying they'd be bad at sex, and two, I was underage. For the record, as of this video, I'm 21 years old. My birthday is December 7th. When correlating this date to my birth date, I would have been 17 years old. She told a 17-year-old that he would be bad at sex. January 2021 rolled around, and I had gotten acquainted with her friends. In a livestream clip of mine, Wubcake would go off on someone completely unrelated to her history and claimed that they were guilt tripping.
Well, and it's just like, no offense, but like, I feel like people that are like under 18 like can be a bit incompetent in projects. Like they can either just disappear completely or they just don't do the fucking work. Like that's why we usually just hire adults to do, you know, an adult project essentially.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you are. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying like most, you know, very young people.
No, I get it. It's fine. I'm used to it anyways.
That's trauma, one of my things.
Okay.
Yeah, but also let's avoid being negative on STWEM, by the way.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brandon.
Yeah, especially for attention.
Oh golly. Okay, careful.
Huh?
Careful for that though. Careful for
I'm
that
sorry,
though, Wub.
I'm sorry, but if someone goes like, oh, it's okay, I'm used to it. It's like, okay.
I mean, to be fair, you does say that a lot. Okay. Oh, they left.
I'm an adult, so.
Oh.
They left. She would defend her behavior by stating that someone guilt-tripped her for 5 years, likely talking about Maid. Unfortunately, I do not have evidence for this part. However, I can confidently state that we watched a documentary video about Randy Stair, the Waze market shooter. When the video talked about how Randy Stair shared that they didn't like Wubs and committed suicide, Wubcake mocked them. While I believe what Randy did was not right, I don't believe making fun of Randy was correct for Wubcake to do either. Late 2021 rolled around and Wubs would break up with her anonymous second ex-partner, which supposedly didn't go that well. She claimed that the second ex-partner had an unequal pay and didn't have a stable job/income. Well, that part aged well. It's here where I started having some seeds of doubt planted in my mind, but the red flags start truly waving in the next chapter. July 2021. Wubcake and Jay Doodles are now in a relationship. Notably, Wubs claimed to Jay that the second ex-partner had mistreated Wubs, and then later insisted that the relationship between her and the second ex-partner didn't affect her at all outside of him talking about her behind her back, despite them having been together for several years. Throughout this entire relationship between Wubs and Jay, Wubs made no effort to go see Jay herself. She also told Jay that if they went on a real date, Jay had to pay for everything. Jay was completely manipulated into believing everything that Wubcake had said, spending over $1,000 in Uber rides to see her, and dealing with Wubcake's textbook-level ignorance, selfishness, and overall abusive behavior, among other things. Meanwhile, September 2021 rolls around, and Angel Love and Wubcake would reconcile briefly. But one day, Angel begins smelling something burning from her room in Wubcake's residence. Her laptop had water poured inside it by Wubs. Wubcake's alter, Jack, would tell Angel that she needs to go. Everyone would stay up until approximately 6 to 7 a.m. that day. Wubs would claim that Angel Love and her partner Violet were telling her lies and using her for their own benefit. Everyone concluded that their living situation would not work, and Wubs removed both Angel and Violet from her residence. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Wubs just didn't like Angel and Violet. She resorts to even property damage, and now you start to see an ongoing pattern. Wubcake has a history of repeatedly convincing people in her group that anyone she previously associated with was an abusive person. Maid, Jennabun, and Angel Love seemed like her primary examples. Jay would also listen to Wubs' claims about everyone else too. But then, January 2022 came around. Wubcake and Jay break up for the first time over one disagreement about Jay's parents. Jack would tweet out the following: "Take a fucking hint. We are done. You're in denial. I know you can see this." Jay was heartbroken over the breakup, and I felt angry for her. I sent messages to Wubs, claiming that what she did was a low blow. She'd reply with a wall of text and say that I should mind my own business, blocking me right after. After that, Wubs' acolytes would remove Jay from their contacts and refuse to hear her out. Initially, you may say, this is relationship drama, I shouldn't get involved. And to some extent, you'd be correct. But I started to connect the dots early, arguably quicker than anyone else Wubs had ever been acquainted with, and noticed this abusive pattern that she's had with her previous associates. Additionally, my policy is that if anyone messes with my friends, you mess with me as well, even if we were buddy-buddy. I warned Jay about this behavior, and she'd understandably be caught in the middle. On one hand, she acknowledges the pattern, but on the other hand, Jay had spent so much to be lovers with Wubs, and didn't want to give up so easily. And in February 2022, Wubs and Jay would reconcile temporarily, and it seemed like things would go well. They even proposed the idea of starting the relationship over again. I, however, was opposed to the idea, but Jay insisted that she wanted to try. I would let Jay continue with her proposal, but also warn her to be careful. Wubs claimed that she was sorry for how she treated me, but Now I think that is pure and utter bullshit. Around March or April of 2022, Wubcake would get her account hacked, which ended up making her need to nuke her account and Discord server. This is why some screenshots have the account name Dead Account, which I still find funny that she was never able to delete. It was around late May of 2022 when Jay and I had to take a break from each other since I was admittingly constantly annoying her, trying to warn her about Wubs and wanting to hang out with her. It was around this time that I had also completely disassociated with Wubcake. Wubs and Jay's relationship would last until June 2023. Jay continued to endure Wubs' abuse, gaslighting, and general neglect. They broke up for the second time and Jay would send a text to Wubs saying that it was time to let her go. Wubcake would respond with, "I understand. I honestly don't know what else to say other than good luck. I hope things work out well for you." Late June was when I started working on my first, and admittingly petty, document on Wubcake. I contacted both Maid and Jay because I knew about Wubs' disdain against the former and I had a history with the latter. Maid talked to me briefly about the relationship and filled me in on details I previously didn't know. When I re-established contact with Jay, however, I apologized to her about my constant annoyances, to which she said no worries and that I was simply trying to protect her. She said the following: "Unfortunately, it turns out you were right about pretty much everything about her, which honestly I want to apologize to you for because she basically told me to cut you off when we initially got back together after all this because she was pissed at anyone who tried to call her out. And I never should have done that to the friends who actually gave a shit about me, just to make her happy." Both people, as well as some more friends, assisted in fact-checking my document and helped my movement. I posted the document on Twitter, and thus, on July 15th, 2023, the StopWubcake movement was born. Once my document was posted, Wubcake would block me from her NSFW account. Her SFW account was inactive for reasons that I still don't know. The document was getting traction, but less than 24 hours after it was posted, my document was reported for harassment, bullying, and threats policy. The report claims would be dropped later, however I go over this incident in this unlisted video, which you may view in the description. I then decided that for more exposure on this issue, I would have to create a YouTube video on the document. Shortly after, several people would come out with their own experiences detailing Wubs' misconduct with them. Notably, I Love KP a Lot, Angel Love, The Inverted Shadow, The Oddish Emily, and Ribbon Chan, all former acquaintances of Wubs, would come out to denounce Wubcake's actions. A few days after I posted my video, I learned more about several of Wubcake's misdeeds, namely the Jen Blake and Jennabun situations. On July 22nd, 2023, Wubcake would finally respond, albeit poorly. She tried to toss the document, but thankfully it's been archived. In the document, Wubs would misinform people about her relationship with Jay, post flat-out incorrect information about her experience with Jennabun, and still spread the narrative that Maid had abused Wubs. She also failed to address the Jen Blake situation and some transphobic remarks she made, as well as carefully worded her document to make things not seem as bad as they were, especially in the Jennabun section. Here's one example. She then confessed to me again as Fluttershy, and I played along with, "Well, Jenna already told me, and you know I'm an adult. But remember, this is incorrect, because of this message here. Remember, Wubs entertained the idea of her and Jenna being together, but chose not to because it would make her, quote, feel like a pedo." One of the most hypocritical things I've ever seen in this document is where she says, "X drama is one thing and should be kept private." I'm gonna let you digest that quote for a few seconds. Did you catch that? Good. You publicly said your ex-partners were abusive. You publicly made insulting tweets about your oldest ex-partner. You publicly made a document on your second ex and had people bully him off of the internet. You had no reason to talk about these people in a demeaning manner, and have no right to say that this should be kept private now of all times. After she canned her response, she would delete the @WubcakeVA Twitter account for good and replace it with her Fizzy, Twitter, and YouTube accounts, the former currently private to this day, and the latter having some videos with comments turned off, advertise her OnlyFans account, and rebrand her NSFW Twitter account to this. What the fuck is this, man? I decided to address all of this in a follow-up video, and so, on October 13th, 2023, StopWubcake 2, The Aftermath, was published on the internet for all to see. Things would die down for a bit until January 22nd, 2024, when Emily would wake up to this text message from Wubs. She claimed that Emily fabricated the parts of beating her dog and choking her grandmother and overall called Emily a liar. She also told Emily to go do drugs because that was all she was good at. On February 14th, 2024, Envy, a longtime simp of Wubcake's, would come out with 2 videos to discredit the movement. I've dissected these 2 videos in part 3, but in short, they threaten to bring us to court since we supposedly have no evidence to back up our claims, and also threaten to dox me. They also ignore the fact that multiple people were present when Wubs confessed to the grooming. Finally, they accuse us of faking screenshots and evidence, but do not show what we faked. On February 16th, 2024, Wubcake would bounce off of Envy's videos combating our accusations by posting a song segment of 2 minutes notice from Hell of a Boss. I reacted to this, and assuming this is her response, that's a bit much now, isn't it? Anyways, late at night on the same day, Wubs and Envy would ignite the Twitter timeline, setting it ablaze. But even so, Wubs would still get some information incorrect here, accusing Jay of starting the movement when in actuality it was me, accusing us of not moving on when she had not moved on, claiming we had not responded to an incest pornography animator's rebuttal when we indeed have. He just chose not to listen, along with numerous other incorrect things. One of my favorite things from that Twitter wildfire is that both Envy and Wubs said that Wubs' confession on Skype didn't happen, and that we would need to get the testimony from the individual in question. And so, that's what I did. On February 16th, 2024, I contacted Haley, who said that she could help me get in contact with Jennabun. I was under the impression that Jennabun had completely disappeared from the internet before, but in actuality, she watched the activity of the StopWubcake movement for months from the shadows. She was still around thanks to friends keeping her company throughout her life after her online presence was deleted. And knowing all of this, I had to ask Haley, is it possible to get her in contact with me? She said yes, but under the few conditions that I only messaged her and that the conversation was on her inactive account. I happily accepted. On February 18th, 2024, Jennabun added me on Discord and told me her testimony, which I talked about in part 3 and gave more emphasis in part 4. I highly encourage you to view part 4, as I cover what I believe are the most important portions of Jenna's testimony. Comparing the 2 testimonies, it was immediately clear to me that this was indeed the same Jennabun as in the October 2017 screenshots with Moliminous. The difference now is that she has been heard by the public, and I'm proud of Jennabun for talking to me, who appeared to her as a stranger on the internet, interested in hearing her tale. This was the final thing I wanted to get from my 3rd video on Wubs, and so, on March 3rd, 2024, which is Wubcake's birthday by the way, StopWubcake 3, Embracing the Villain Role, was created and published. After StopWubcake 3, Jennabun would leave her final statement on March 7th, 2024. Jennabun said that she is tired of her experience with Wubcake being treated as simply drama. Jenna is tired of being silenced for over 10 years and is furious at how Wubcake tried to change her story while Jenna's remained the same, and would even compromise her anonymity by providing a voice clip to confirm that it was indeed Jennabun who was speaking.
Yes, this is Jennabun.
The publication of this voice clip was done to dispel the rumor that the inactive account was a fake decoy. An outsider to StopWubcake would hear Jenna's voice clip and go, "How do you know this is Jenna? This could be any ordinary girl." But people such as Inverted Shadow and Ribbon-chan have recognized that voice from the voice clip that Jenna provided. Once I posted the video titled Jennabun Stops Wubcake, Jenna would finally proceed to kill off her previous persona as Jennabun and live from now on as Jenny. Additionally, after I posted Jenny's final statement to YouTube for all to see and see the mass support, even with the hashtag #SupportJennabun, lots of the combative tweets that Envy and Wubcake created against us were deleted. Even the videos that Envy posted were deleted. I wonder why. Regardless, I reposted them here so everyone can see them. You know, just in case you wanted to see not only Envy's poor accusations, but also their somber attempts to intimidate me with their animation and empty threats. Now that I've covered Wubcake's entire history, I think one can hopefully come to the conclusion that Wubcake has a checkered past that she refuses to acknowledge by any means necessary. No innocent person would act the way that Wubs did when she was called out by this movement. The silence is deafening. There are graves waiting to be filled with bodies to fill them. Some of these bodies have expressed that they wish they were in the grave to begin with. That's because we've allowed this coward behind walls to act as she pleased. And there's no redeeming someone who's cast so much malice over the years. This person has cried abuser for almost a decade, when she was the abuser to begin with. Her infamous term, pathological liar, is exactly what she embodies. Very importantly and dearly to me though, she was someone I formerly considered a friend. Had it not been for her, I wouldn't have met so many people, some of whom I see as great friends, others as simple acquaintances. But this is someone who's exploited people financially, emotionally, and physically. She's just hiding behind the mask of deceit and betrayal. If you were an acquaintance of Wubcake and have a platform, whether on Twitter, YouTube, or anything else, I highly encourage you to share this story. I'm afraid that, as of now, she still refuses to take accountability for her actions, distancing herself from the movement as much as possible. Our goal was to bring awareness to her heinous crimes, ranging from her verbal abuse to pedophilia, not to harass anyone, and I will still advocate for this stance. If you harass anyone in this movement, whether it is Wubs herself or any other party involved, you are not welcome. With all this said, however, I think our movement was successful. I think a lot of us have been waiting with bated breath for a long time, myself included. And now that this video that you are watching is public for everyone to see, we can finally, officially, stop Wubcake.